In the center of your brain, hidden deep within the folds of ancient biology, sits a tiny pine cone-shaped gland, no larger than a grain of rice. The ancient Egyptians called it the seat of the soul. Descartes believed it was the point where the immaterial mind touched the material body. Hindu mystics knew it as the Ajna chakra, the third eye, the gateway to higher dimensions of consciousness. For thousands of years, mystery schools, shamans, and spiritual adepts guarded the secrets of this enigmatic organ with their lives. And then, science forgot. For centuries, modern medicine dismissed the pineal gland as nothing more than a vestigial remnant, a biological relic with no real purpose. It was buried in textbooks, relegated to a footnote, stripped of its mystique. But something extraordinary is happening right now. Neuroscientists, biophysicists, and researchers at the cutting edge of consciousness studies are making discoveries that would make the ancient priests smile knowingly. They're finding that this mysterious gland produces DMT, the so-called spirit molecule. They're discovering it contains crystalline structures that may function as biological antennae. They're uncovering its role in regulating not just sleep, but states of perception that touch the edges of the mystical. The ancients weren't speaking in metaphor, they were speaking in code, a code we're only now beginning to decrypt. In this journey, we're going to peel back the veil on one of humanity's most profound secrets. We'll walk the halls of Egyptian temples where priests performed rituals to activate this sacred organ. We'll examine what modern science has discovered about its biochemical magic. And most importantly, we'll explore what this means for you, for your consciousness, your perception, and your ability to access states of awareness that most people never even know exist. Because here's the truth they don't want you to realize. You carry within your skull a biological stargate, and the key to unlocking it has been hidden in plain sight for millennia. Are you ready to remember what you were never supposed to forget? The story begins not in a laboratory, but in the shadowed halls of ancient Egypt, where the Eye of Horus, that iconic symbol adorning temple walls and sacred papyri, held a secret that would remain hidden for thousands of years. In 1995, a curious discovery sent ripples through both the medical and esoteric communities. When you overlay the Eye of Horus onto a cross-section of the human brain, it maps with startling precision onto the anatomy of the thalamus, corpus callosum, and yes, the pineal gland itself. The centerpiece of Horus's eye, that distinctive spiral, sits exactly where the pineal gland resides. This wasn't coincidence. This was encoded knowledge. The Egyptian priests didn't have MRI machines or microscopes, yet somehow they possessed intimate knowledge of the brain's deepest structures. They understood that this tiny gland was the bridge between worlds, the physical and the divine. In their temples, initiates underwent elaborate ceremonies designed to open the eye, to activate this dormant organ, and access what they called the duat, the realm of the gods, the dimension of pure consciousness. But Egypt was not alone in this knowing. Travel east to the ancient Vedic traditions of India, and you'll find the concept of the Ajna chakra, the sixth energy center located precisely at the center of the forehead, corresponding to the pineal gland's position deep within the brain. Sanskrit texts thousands of years old speak of this chakra as the command center of consciousness, the seat of intuition, the eye that sees beyond the physical spectrum of light. Yogis spent lifetimes in meditation attempting to awaken this dormant eye, understanding that its activation meant transcendence of ordinary reality. In the Western mystery traditions, the Rosicrucians and Freemasons encoded this knowledge into their symbolism: the all-seeing eye, the blazing star, the hidden stone. The pineal gland was the philosopher's stone, not a physical substance to be created through alchemy, but a biological treasure to be awakened through inner transformation. As above, so below, they whispered. The kingdom of heaven is within. Even René Descartes, the father of modern Western philosophy, broke ranks with the mechanistic worldview he helped create. In his writings, he declared the pineal gland to be the principal seat of the soul, and the point where human consciousness, that ineffable immaterial essence, interfaced with the machinery of the body. He was ridiculed for this belief, dismissed as mystical nonsense by his more materialistic peers. And so the knowledge was buried. As the Age of Enlightenment gave way to scientific materialism, the pineal gland became an embarrassment, a remnant of superstitious thinking. Medical texts reduced it to its most mundane function: melatonin production, sleep regulation, nothing more. The ancient wisdom was branded as primitive mythology, the rantings of pre-scientific minds grasping for meaning in a meaningless universe. But the ancients were patient. They knew that truth, like water, always finds a way to surface. They encoded their knowledge in symbols, in myths, in architectural marvels that would outlast empires. They waited for a time when humanity would be ready, when science would advance far enough to circle back and rediscover what shamans and mystics had always known. That time is now. Let's descend into the biology of mystery itself. Picture this. Deep within the geometric center of your brain, nestled between the two hemispheres in a tiny cave of bone and tissue, the pineal gland floats in cerebrospinal fluid like a sacred relic suspended in holy water. It's positioned at the exact geometric center of your skull, equidistant from your eyes, equidistant from your ears, equidistant from the top of your head and the base of your spine. The ancients didn't choose this location symbolically. They mapped it because they knew. Now here's where it gets fascinating. Unlike virtually every other part of your brain, the pineal gland sits outside the blood-brain barrier. Let that sink in. This tiny organ has direct access to your bloodstream in a way that the rest of your brain, protected, isolated, filtered, does not. It tastes every chemical, every hormone, every molecule flowing through your body. It's sampling reality itself in real time. But the pineal gland isn't just chemically sensitive, it's photosensitive. Despite being buried in complete darkness at the center of your skull, this mysterious organ contains photoreceptor cells, remarkably similar to those in your retina. Cells designed to detect light. In some amphibians and reptiles, this connection is even more obvious. They possess what's called a parietal eye, a literal third eye on top of their head connected directly to the pineal gland. Evolution didn't erase this eye in humans. It simply moved it inward, shielded it, made it subtle. Your pineal gland is an eye that sees without needing external light. The mainstream scientific explanation is straightforward enough. The pineal gland produces melatonin, the hormone that regulates your circadian rhythm. Light enters your eyes, signals travel to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, messages are relayed to the pineal gland, and melatonin production is either triggered or suppressed. You get sleepy when it's dark, alert when it's light. Simple biology, case closed, except it's not closed, not even remotely. In 1990, Dr. Rick Strassman, a psychiatrist and researcher at the University of New Mexico, proposed a hypothesis that would resurrect the ancient mystical understanding of the pineal gland. He suggested that this tiny organ might be producing something far more interesting than just melatonin. It might be synthesizing DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, one of the most powerful psychedelic compounds known to science. DMT is the molecule that shamans have been accessing through ayahuasca ceremonies for thousands of years. It's the compound that, when ingested, catapults human consciousness into realms so bizarre, so otherworldly, so seemingly real, that those who experience it often return, convinced they've touched something beyond the material universe. Entities, geometric dimensions, the dissolution of self, the experience of dying and being reborn. This is the territory of DMT. And Strassman's research suggested your brain might be making it naturally. His groundbreaking studies revealed that the pineal gland contains all the necessary precursors and enzymes to synthesize DMT. In 2013, researchers confirmed that DMT is indeed produced endogenously in mammalian brains. They found it in the pineal glands of live rats. The implications are staggering. You may carry within your skull a gland capable of producing the very molecule that mystics have used for millennia, to access transcendent states of consciousness. But there's more. So much more. Recent research has discovered that the pineal gland contains calcite microcrystals, not just calcium deposits from aging and fluoride exposure, which we'll address later, but actual piezoelectric calcite crystals with a specific geometric structure. Piezoelectric means these crystals can convert mechanical stress into electrical signals and vice versa. They can receive and transmit. Dr. Andrew Nichols and researchers studying the quantum biology of consciousness have noted that these crystalline structures bear an uncanny resemblance to the crystals used in radio receivers and transmitters. Could the pineal gland be functioning as a biological transducer? An antenna picking up frequencies beyond the ordinary electromagnetic spectrum our five senses detect? The ancients called it the seat of the soul. Science is beginning to call it something equally mysterious: a neuroendocrine transducer, potentially capable of converting non-physical signals into biochemical cascades that alter consciousness itself. Your third eye isn't just a metaphor. It's an organ of perception operating on wavelengths we're only beginning to understand. Core Explanation, Part 2. Now we must venture into the darker corridors of this mystery, the parts that make the establishment uncomfortable, the questions that blur the line between cutting-edge science and ancient esoteric truth. Let's talk about what's been done to your pineal gland, often without your knowledge or consent. In the 1990s, a British scientist named Jennifer Luke conducted research that sent shockwaves through alternative health communities, though it was largely ignored by mainstream medicine. She discovered that the pineal gland is a calcification magnet, particularly for fluoride. Of all the soft tissues in your body, the pineal gland accumulates more fluoride than any other, even more than bones. Her studies on gerbils showed that fluoride deposits create a hard shell around the pineal gland, and she found similar calcification in human pineal glands during autopsies, with fluoride concentrations reaching extraordinarily high levels. The implications are profound. Fluoride has been added to public water supplies since the 1940s under the banner of dental health. But if this chemical systematically calcifies the one gland that ancient traditions considered the gateway to higher consciousness, we must ask, is this simply an unfortunate side effect, or is there something more deliberate at play? Before you dismiss this as conspiracy theory, consider what calcification actually does. A calcified pineal gland produces less melatonin. This is documented medical fact. Sleep disturbances, hormonal imbalances, and disrupted circadian rhythms all follow. But what about the functions science hasn't fully acknowledged yet? What about DMT production? What about the gland's potential role as a consciousness antenna? If the ancients were right that this organ is the gateway to expanded awareness, and if modern society has inadvertently or intentionally been closing that gateway through environmental toxins, we're looking at a spiritual crisis masquerading as a public health policy. The rabbit hole goes deeper. Dr. Strassman's research into DMT revealed something that the ancient shamans had been saying all along. DMT experiences consistently involve encounters with seemingly autonomous entities, access to geometric hyperdimensional spaces, and the overwhelming sense that what's being experienced is more real than ordinary waking reality. Thousands of trip reports describe eerily similar experiences: breakthrough into a space of living light, encounters with beings of crystalline intelligence, the reception of information that feels ancient and familiar. Strassman himself hypothesized that the pineal gland might release DMT during extreme states: birth, death, and possibly during deep meditation or near-death experiences. This would explain the commonalities in mystical experiences across cultures and centuries. The visions of saints, the encounters of mystics, the tunnel of light reported by those who've clinically died and returned, all potentially the result of an endogenous DMT release from the pineal gland during these threshold moments. But here's the paradox that keeps scientists up at night. If DMT is simply a hallucination, a misfiring of neurons, why does it feel more real than reality itself? Why do people return from DMT experiences with information they couldn't have known? Why do the eye realms accessed remain consistent across thousands of independent experiences? Some researchers on the fringe of respectable science are beginning to whisper what mystics have shouted for millennia. Perhaps DMT isn't creating an hallucination. Perhaps it's removing a filter. Perhaps the pineal gland, when fully activated, allows consciousness to perceive frequencies and dimensions that are always present, but normally invisible to our limited sensory apparatus. Think of it this way. Your eyes can only see a tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. Infrared, ultraviolet, radio waves, gamma rays. They're all around you right now, but you're blind to them. What if consciousness itself operates on a similar spectrum? What if the pineal gland, properly decalcified and activated, can tune into channels of reality that materialist science hasn't even developed instruments to measure yet? The ancient Egyptians performed elaborate rituals involving specific breathing techniques, sound frequencies, and sacred geometry to activate the pineal gland. Tibetan monks use sustained meditation practices focusing on the point between the eyebrows. South American shamans use plant medicines that directly interact with the same serotonin receptors that DMT binds to. Different methods, same target, the activation of this mysterious organ. And there's another piece of the puzzle that science is just beginning to examine: the relationship between the pineal gland and the Earth's electromagnetic field. The Schumann resonance, the fundamental frequency at which the Earth's electromagnetic field vibrates, approximately 7.83 Hz, corresponds closely to the alpha brainwave state associated with meditation and deep relaxation. Some researchers suggest that the calcite crystals in the pineal gland may be sensitive to these geomagnetic frequencies, essentially allowing your consciousness to sync with the planet itself. Indigenous cultures have always known this. They speak of being connected to the earth, of receiving visions and guidance from the land. What if they weren't being poetic? What if the pineal gland literally functions as a biological receiver for terrestrial and possibly even cosmic frequencies? The ancients encoded a warning into their teachings: guard the sacred eye, protect the seat of the soul. For those who control this gateway control consciousness itself. Now, thousands of years later, we find ourselves in a world where pineal calcification is epidemic, where melatonin dysfunction is normalized, where the very idea of expanded consciousness is marginalized and pathologized. Coincidence? Or the fulfillment of a very old agenda? Knowledge without application is merely entertainment. The ancient mystery schools understood this. Wisdom was never given freely to the passive observer, only to the dedicated initiate willing to do the inner work. So now we arrive at the most crucial question. How do you reclaim what has been taken from you? How do you decalcify, activate, and awaken the dormant eye at the center of your consciousness? Let's begin with purification, the foundation of all esoteric practice. Decalcifying the pineal gland. Your first task is to stop the poisoning. This isn't metaphorical. If your pineal gland is encrusted with fluoride and calcium deposits, it cannot function at its full potential. Start by eliminating fluoride from your life as much as possible. Switch to fluoride-free toothpaste. If your water supply is fluoridated, invest in a reverse osmosis filter or distillation system. Standard carbon filters won't remove fluoride. This alone can halt further calcification. But removal is only half the equation. You must actively detoxify what's already accumulated. Certain foods and supplements have been shown to help decalcify the pineal gland. Tamarind, a fruit used in traditional medicine across Africa and Asia, has been scientifically demonstrated to remove fluoride from the body through urine. Raw apple cider vinegar, rich in malic acid, helps break down calcium deposits. Nascent iodine supplementation supports the detoxification process by allowing the body to excrete fluoride more efficiently. Chlorella and spirulina, ancient superfoods, chelate heavy metals and toxins that burden this delicate organ. The ancient Egyptians weren't just being symbolic when they avoided certain foods and underwent ritual purifications before entering sacred spaces. They understood that the vessel, your body, must be pure for the divine to enter. But physical detoxification is only the beginning. Activation through ancient techniques. The yogis of India developed precise practices for awakening the Ajna chakra, and modern neuroscience is beginning to validate their effectiveness. The most direct technique is Trataka, the practice of candle gazing. Sit in a darkened room with a single candle at eye level, approximately arm's length away. Gaze softly at the flame without blinking for as long as comfortable. Begin with 1 minute and gradually increase. When your eyes water and you must close them, visualize the flame's afterimage in the space between your eyebrows, right at the location of your pineal gland. This practice does something remarkable. It stimulates the optic nerve, which sends signals directly to the pineal gland. You're essentially exercising a dormant pathway, strengthening the connection between light perception and this mysterious organ. Practitioners report increased dream vividness, enhanced intuition, and spontaneous visions after weeks of consistent practice. Then there's pranayama, specifically alternate nostril breathing combined with breath retention. The ancient texts claim that holding the breath after a full inhalation creates pressure in the skull that awakens the sleeping serpent. Modern research shows that breath retention increases carbon dioxide levels, which dilates blood vessels and increases cerebral blood flow. More blood to the pineal gland means more oxygen, more nutrients, and potentially more activity. Here's a simple but powerful protocol. Sit in a comfortable meditation posture. Close your right nostril with your thumb. Inhale slowly through the left nostril for a count of 4. Hold the breath for a count of 16. Close the left nostril with your ring finger, release the right, and exhale for a count of 8. Then reverse. Inhale right, hold, exhale left. Repeat for 10 minutes daily, ideally before sunrise when melatonin levels are naturally shifting. Sound frequency and resonance. The mystery schools understood something profound about vibration. Chanting, drumming, and sacred sounds weren't just ceremonial. They were technologies for altering consciousness. The pineal gland, containing those piezoelectric crystals we discussed, may be particularly sensitive to specific frequencies. The frequency of 963 Hz, known in ancient solfeggio scales as the frequency of the gods, is said to stimulate the pineal gland directly. Modern sound healers report that sustained exposure to this frequency during meditation produces profound states of awareness. You can find 963 Hz tones easily online. Listen through headphones during meditation, allowing the vibration to penetrate deep into the center of your skull. Similarly, the practice of humming creates vibrations that resonate through the skull bones directly to the pineal gland. The yogic practice of Bhramari pranayama, bee breath, involves creating a humming sound on the exhale that literally vibrates the brain. 5 to 10 minutes of this practice can shift consciousness dramatically. Darkness retreats and light exposure. Here's a practice that seems counterintuitive but is extraordinarily powerful: controlled exposure to complete darkness. The ancient initiates would spend days in the total darkness of underground chambers. Why? Because when deprived of external light, the pineal gland goes into overdrive, potentially producing higher levels of melatonin and, according to some theories, DMT. You don't need to spend weeks in a cave. Start with darkness meditation. Create a completely dark environment. No LED lights, no cracks under doors. Absolute darkness. Sit in meditation for 30 minutes to an hour. Your pineal gland, freed from the suppression of external light, begins to activate. Many practitioners report seeing geometric patterns, colors, and even visions in this pitch-black state. The pineal gland literally creating light from within. Conversely, controlled exposure to specific light frequencies also activates the pineal. Sunrise gazing, looking at the sun during the first minutes of sunrise when UV radiation is minimal, sends specific light frequencies through your eyes directly to the pineal gland. This practice, called sun gazing in yogic traditions, must be done safely and gradually, but practitioners report enhanced energy, clarity, and spiritual experiences. The practice of presence. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, understand this. Your pineal gland responds to your state of consciousness. Stress, anxiety, and the constant mental chatter of modern life keep this organ suppressed. The ancients didn't just perform rituals, they cultivated stillness. Dedicate time to simple presence. Sit, breathe. Focus your attention on the point between your eyebrows. Don't force visions or experiences. Simply rest your awareness there, patiently, like a gardener tending a seed. The awakening of the third eye isn't a dramatic explosion. It's a gentle unfurling that happens when you create the right conditions and then get out of the way. Combine these practices with integrity in your daily life. The mystery schools were clear. The activation of higher consciousness requires ethical living. Dishonesty, cruelty, and selfish behavior create energetic blockages that no amount of technique can overcome. The pineal gland is the gateway to the divine, and the divine only enters a purified vessel. This is not a quick fix. This is a path, but it's a path your ancestors walked, and they left the map encoded in symbols, rituals, and teachings that have survived millennia of suppression. The key has always been within you. Now you know where to turn it. We've journeyed from the temple halls of ancient Egypt to the cutting-edge laboratories of modern neuroscience, and what we've discovered is both humbling and empowering. The ancients were right all along. They didn't have electron microscopes or brain imaging technology, yet they mapped the geography of consciousness with breathtaking precision. They understood that buried deep within the human skull lies a biological gateway, a tiny pine-cone-shaped organ that serves as the bridge between matter and spirit, between the visible and invisible worlds. What they called the Eye of Horus, the third eye, the seat of the soul, science now recognizes as the pineal gland, a photosensitive, chemically versatile organ capable of producing powerful consciousness-altering compounds and potentially receiving frequencies beyond our ordinary perception. But here's what makes this knowledge dangerous, what makes it revolutionary. You are not powerless. Despite the calcification, despite the fluoride in the water and the artificial light that disrupts your circadian rhythms, despite a materialist culture that denies the very existence of consciousness beyond brain chemistry, you still carry within you the biological machinery for transcendence. The mystery schools kept this knowledge hidden, not because it was false, but because it was too true. Because an awakened population, a humanity with activated pineal glands and expanded consciousness, cannot be easily controlled, manipulated, or kept in spiritual darkness. The guardians of ancient wisdom understood what we're only now remembering. Freedom begins in consciousness, and consciousness begins with the activation of that sacred eye at the center of your being. Science is catching up piece by piece, discovering what the mystics encoded in symbols and rituals. DMT production, crystalline structures, electromagnetic sensitivity. Each new discovery validates what yogis and shamans and Egyptian priests practiced for thousands of years. We stand at a threshold moment in human history, where ancient wisdom and modern science are converging, where the materialist paradigm is cracking open to reveal dimensions it once denied. But knowledge alone changes nothing. The real question is, what will you do with this understanding? Will you continue to walk through life with your third eye dormant, perceiving only the narrow bandwidth of reality that your physical senses detect? Or will you take up the practices, the purifications, the patient inner work required to awaken what sleeps within you? The choice has always been yours. The ancients couldn't make that choice for their initiates, and I cannot make it for you. But I'll leave you with this final thought, a question that has echoed through mystery schools since the beginning of recorded history. What if everything you think of as reality is just the tiniest fraction of what actually exists? What if your pineal gland, fully awakened, could show you the rest? The Egyptians knew, the yogis knew, the shamans knew, and now you know. The only question that remains is, are you ready to see? If this journey into the mysteries of consciousness resonates with you, if you feel the call to explore deeper, subscribe to this channel and activate notifications. The ancient wisdom is awakening, one seeker at a time. Share this video with someone who's ready to remember what they've forgotten. And in the comments below, tell me, have you experienced anything that might be a glimpse through your third eye? Your story might be the key that unlocks someone else's awakening. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep your inner eye open.